Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. In this module, we will study secondary treatment of the wastewater. Secondary treatment is a treatment process of wastewater where biological processes are used to remove the dissolved and suspended organic compounds. The objective of the secondary treatment is the further treatment of the effluent from the primary treatment, and this involves the removal of biodegradable dissolved colloidal organic matter using the aerobic biological treatment processes. The aerobic biological treatment is performed in the presence of oxygen by aerobic microorganisms. These microorganisms are mainly bacteria that metabolize the organic matter present in the wastewater and produce the end products like carbon dioxide, ammonia and water, as well as they also increase in the number. In this module, we will study the several aerobic biological processes that are used for the secondary treatment of wastewater. These processes primarily differ in the manner in which oxygen is supplied to the microorganisms and the rate at which the organisms metabolize the organic matter. After the secondary treatment, the microorganisms must be separated from the treated wastewater by sedimentation to produce the clarified secondary effluent. The sedimentation tanks, which are usually referred as secondary clarifiers, they operate in the same manner as the primary clarifiers. The biological solids which are removed during the secondary sedimentation is called secondary sludge, and this is normally combined with the primary sludge and sent for processing. After this kind of treatment, the wastewater may be called as secondary treated wastewater. The common high rate secondary processes include activated sludge processes, trickling filter or biofilters, oxidation ponds, rotating biological contactors, and a combination of two of these processes in series sometimes is used to treat the municipal wastewater containing high concentration of organic materials from the industrial sources. Let us discuss these secondary processes one by one. First, activated sludge process. In the activated sludge process, the suspended growth reactors consisting of an aeration tank or basin containing a suspension of wastewater and microorganisms is used. The content of the aeration tank are mixed vigorously by the aeration devices, which supply oxygen to the biological suspension. These aeration devices are commonly submerged diffusers that release the compressed air, or they can be mechanical surface aerators that introduce the air by agitating the liquid surface. The hydraulic retention time in the aeration tank usually ranges from 3 to 8 hours, but can be higher with the high BOD wastewaters. Following the aeration step, the microorganisms are separated from the liquid by sedimentation, and the clarified liquid is secondary effluent. A portion of the biological sludge is recycled to the aeration basin to maintain a high mixed liquor suspended solids level. The remainder is removed from the process and sent to the sludge processing to maintain a relative constant concentration of microorganisms in the treatment system. Several variations of the activated sludge process, such as extended aeration and oxidation ditches, are in common use, but in principle they are all similar. The high concentration of toxic waste like pesticides, metal plating waste or extreme pH can kill the microorganisms involved in the secondary treatment process, so they affect the activated sludge process. The second kind of secondary treatment process involves use of trickling filters. A trickling filter, also called a biofilter, consists of a basin or a tower which is filled with the support media. This support media could be limestone chips, could be specially fabricated plastic media, it could be stones, it could be wood shavings, or it could be the carbonaceous carbon. Such media must have the large surface area. Wastewater is applied intermittently or sometimes continuously over this support media through a perforated spray arm. The microorganisms, they are attached to the support media and they form a biological layer called biofilm over this supporting media. The organic matter present in the wastewater diffuses into the film where it is metabolized by the microorganisms, and the treated water is collected at in the drains at the base of the tank. The oxygen is normally supplied to the microbial film by the natural flow of air, either up or down through the media, depending upon the relative temperatures of the wastewater and the ambient air. The forced air can be supplied by blowers, but this is rarely necessary. The thickness of biofilm increases as the new organisms grow, and periodically the portions of the film they also slug off from the media. This slugged material is separated from the liquid in a secondary clarifier, and the sludge is discharged for the processing. The clarified liquid from the secondary clarifier is the secondary effluent, and a portion is often recycled to the biofilter to improve the hydraulic distribution of the wastewater over the filter. The secondary effluent can be again passed through the trickling filter if the desired level of BOD reduction is not achieved. Overloading of this trickling filter bed may increase the biofilm thickness, which will lead to the anaerobic conditions and possibly bioclogging of the filter media. The third kind of secondary treatment process includes rotating biological contactors. The rotating biological contactors are fixed film reactors similar to biofilters, where the organisms are attached to the support media, and here the support media is the rotating disc. In the case of rotating biological contactor, the slowly rotating discs are partially submerged in the flowing wastewater into the reactor. Oxygen is supplied to the attached biofilm from the air when the film is out of the water, and from the liquid when this is submerged in the water. Since oxygen is transferred to the wastewater by surface turbulence created by the rotation of the disc, wastewater in the secondary treatment is aerated. The slugged pieces of the biofilm are removed in the same manner described as in the biofilters. The high rate biological treatment process in combination with primary sedimentation removes 85% of the BOD, that is the biological oxygen demand, and the suspended solids originally present in the wastewater, and some of the heavy metals they are also removed during this process. When coupled with the disinfection step, these processes can provide substantial removal of microorganisms. However, they remove very little of the phosphorus, nitrogen, non-biodegradable organics or dissolved minerals. The different type of natural biological treatment systems, the high rate of biological treatment processes in combination with primary sedimentation removes approximately 85% of the BOD, that is biological oxygen demand, and suspended solids originally present in the raw wastewater, and some of the heavy metals they are also removed from the effluent. When coupled with the disinfection step, these processes can provide substantial removal of microorganisms also, but the removal of phosphorus, nitrogen, non-biodegradable organics and dissolved minerals is a little. We are also having the natural biological treatment systems, and the different types of natural biological treatment systems are wastewater stabilization ponds, constructed wetlands where the macrophyte treatment is given, or the nutrient film technique. The natural low rate biological treatment systems are available for the treatment of organic wastewater like municipal sewage, and they tend to be lower in cost and less sophisticated in operation and maintenance. Although such processes tend to be land intensive in comparison to the conventional high rate biological processes which we had already discussed. They are often more effective in removing the pathogens, and so they are reliable and continuous if properly designed and not overloaded. Among the natural biological treatment systems available, stabilization ponds and the overland treatments using the constructed wetlands and macrophyte treatments have been widely used for the treatment of the wastewater. Let us first start with the wastewater stabilization pond. The stabilization ponds are an important part of the natural treatment ways. The desired treatment effect is achieved by physical, chemical and biological processes occurring in the aquatic environment in the presence of water and wetland biocenosis. This biocenosis includes the bacteria, phytoplankton and zooplankton present in the aquatic system and the higher vegetation and the organisms also. Wastewater stabilization ponds can be divided into three categories. Number 1 anaerobic ponds, number 2 facultative ponds and number 3 aerobic ponds. Aerobic ponds are also called maturation ponds. For the most effective treatment, these waste stabilization ponds should be linked in a series of 3 with affluent being transferred from the anaerobic pond to facultative pond and finally to the aerobic pond. As you can see in the diagram, the anaerobic pond act as the primary treatment stage and this reduces the organic load. The solids and the BOD removal occurs in this anaerobic pond by the sedimentation, and these sediments are then subsequently anaerobically digested and it will lead to the accumulation of the sludge. The organic carbon is converted into the methane by the anaerobic microorganisms and up to 60% removal of the BOD, biological oxygen demand, takes place in the anaerobic pond. The treated effluent from the anaerobic pond is transferred to the facultative ponds where further BOD removal takes place. The top layer of the facultative pond receives oxygen from the natural diffusion process or the wind mixing or the algae present in the top layer. They are photosynthesizing, they are also releasing the oxygen, but the lower layer is deprived of oxygen. That is why the upper layer of the facultative pond is having the aerobic conditions and the down layers they are having the anaerobic conditions. Both aerobic and anaerobic organisms, they work together to achieve the BOD reduction up to 75% of the initial present in the raw water. From the facultative pond, the treated effluent is transferred to the aerobic ponds, which are also called the maturation ponds or the polishing ponds. These aerobic ponds are designed for the pathogen removal. It is also called maturation or finishing pond, and it is the last step and the shallowest pond which is ensuring the final level of treatment. The treated water from the facultative pond is transferred to the aerobic pond, which are designed for the pathogen removal. These aerobic ponds are also called the maturation or the finishing pond. The aerobic treatment is the last step and the aerobic ponds are the shallowest pond, which are ensuring the entry of the sunlight up to the deepest layer of the pond so that the photosynthesis can take place and the oxygen liberated will maintain the dissolved oxygen level in the finished water. These waste stabilization ponds are low cost for operation and maintenance, but they are having high removal of biological oxygen demand and the pathogens. Another kind of natural treatment of the wastewater is the macrophyte treatment using the constructed wetlands. The natural and artificial wetlands and marshes have been used to treat the raw sewage or partially treated effluents. The natural wetlands are usually unmanaged, whereas artificial systems are designed to maximize the performance by providing the optimum conditions for the macrophyte growth. The maturation ponds or aerobic ponds in the waste stabilization system, when incorporate the floating, submerged or emergent aquatic plant species, are termed as macrophyte ponds, and they have been used for upgrading the effluents from the stabilization pond. Macrophytes take up large amount of inorganic nutrients and heavy metals as a consequence of the growth requirement, and they also decrease the concentration of algal cells because of the light shading due to their leaf canopy. These floating macrophyte systems utilizing water hyacinth receives the primary sewage effluent and they treat this effluent to the secondary treatment effluent quality level. The treated water after the macrophyte treatment still contains nutrients and is therefore appropriate for reuse in the agriculture, but not fit for direct recharge into the surface water. Floating macrophyte species with their large roots are also efficient in the nutrient stripping. The Salvinia, Spirodella, Lemna and Eichhornia, they have been used for treating the wastewater. In tropical regions, water hyacinth approximately doubles in their biomass in every 6 days, and a macrophyte pond can produce more than 250 kg of this biomass per hectare in a single day, and this contributes up to 80% of nitrogen and up to 50% of phosphorus reduction in the wastewater. A submerged macrophyte, ceratophyllum, is also very efficient in removing ammonia. It removes up to 97% of ammonia present in the wastewater and approximately 96% of phosphorus from the raw sewage, and also removes up to 95% of the BOD. But it has a slower growth rate than the Eichhornia, which allows less frequent harvesting. In such macrophyte pond systems, apart from the physical removal process, the aquatic vascular plants, they also serve as living substrates for the microbial activity, and these microorganisms further augment the removal of BOD, nitrogen and phosphorus. The basic function of the macrophyte in this mechanism is to assimilate, concentrate and store the contaminants on a short term basis, and subsequent harvesting of this plant biomass will result in the permanent removal of these stored contaminants from the pond treatment system. Flies and mosquitoes is a big problem and their breeding in the floating macrophyte pond, but this can be partially alleviated by introducing the larva eating fish species such as Gambusia and Piocelia into the ponds. These floating macrophytes, after harvesting, they can be fed to the cattle. Also, they can be used as a green manure in the agriculture if they are not having the toxic components accumulated in them. They can also be composted aerobically to produce a fertilizer or a soil conditioner, or can be converted into biogas in the anaerobic digester, in which case the residual sludge can also be applied as a fertilizer or a soil conditioner. The another natural method of wastewater treatment is the nutrient film technique. The nutrient film technique is a modification of the hydroponic plant growth system, in which the plants are grown directly on a impermeable surface, to which a thin film of wastewater is continuously applied through the pump. The root production in the impermeable surface is very high, and the large surface area traps and accumulates the matter. Plant top growth provides the nutrient uptake, also shades for the protection against algal growth, and water removal in the form of transpiration, while the large mass of self-generating root system and the accumulated material serves as the living filters in the wastewater. As per Jewell in 1983, the nutrient film technique mechanism has been divided into 3 sections. The first section says the preliminary treatment by the plant species with their large root systems which are capable of surviving and growing in the grossly polluted condition. The large sludge accumulation and anaerobic conditions and the trace metals which are precipitated and the entrapment characterize the mechanism, and a large portion of wastewater BOD and suspended solids are removed. In the second step, the nutrient conversion and recovery due to high biomass production is taking place, and finally, wastewater polishing takes place during the nutrient limited plant production depending on the required effluent quality. Based upon this hypothesis, a 3-year pilot study has proved that this is a viable alternative for the sewage treatment. In this nutrient film technique, reed canary grass was used as the main test species, and it resulted into the production of effluent which is better than the secondary effluent quality at an application rate of 10 centimeter per day of the settled domestic sewage and synthetic wastewater. The highest loading rates achieved were equivalent to treating the sewage generated by a population of 10,000 on an area of 2 hectares. Plants other than reed canary grass were also tested, and those that flourished best in this nutrient film technique are cattails, bulrush, strawflower, Japanese millet, roses, Napier grass, marigold, wheat and phragmites. Students, in this module we had learned the various secondary treatment processes which are involved in the treatment of the wastewater. Typically, these secondary processes, they remove 85% of the biological oxygen demand and the suspended solids during this process. The water after this secondary treatment still contains the residual amount of nitrogen, phosphorus, heavy metals and pathogens, and for further removal of these pollutants, the water is transported to the tertiary treatment system and disinfection. Thank you.